It's Luke here for SimBoxx. Delighted today to be joined by heavyweight Nick Campbell. Nick, how we doing?
Yeah, good man, good. Just over in Jersey at the moment. I'm actually carrying a wee bit of an injury, which has proven a wee bit difficult to get round. So in the middle of doing some rehab for that, still training, still ticking over and doing what I can do. But aye, just carrying an injury at the moment. I'm trying to get cleared up.
Well, that's a good point to start on, to be honest. 'Cause I was going to mention about the slight inactivity and whatnot, and your hopes to have got back in the ring. So is that down to this injury? Has it been something that you've been suffering with for a little while now?
Yeah, kind of a mixture of things. Luck's not really been on my side in terms of getting fights to come through different, a couple of different reasons. And then obviously the last little while I've been carrying this injury, which has made things a little bit more difficult. So yeah, a combination of things, but we'll see what happens. Never say never. I'm still, like I say, I'm still trying to keep myself fit while managing this injury, and then you never know what can happen.
Well, of course, you train with Andy Lee, who trains Joseph Parker. Is that this injury going to impact you being involved in that camp ahead of his fight with Daniel Dubois?
No, listen, Joe's got, specific sparring partners for this fight. I don't really replicate Daniel Dubois too well, so aye. He's got Bomber Brown there. He's got Guido Vanello. He's got a couple of other boys. Some real good fighters who can really put pressure on and replicate Daniel's style pretty well. So I was never really planning on being too involved in that camp anyway. Although I'm touching base with the lads, most weeks and having FaceTimes and catching up and seeing how things are going. So aye, that's where that's at.
Of course, now with Andy Lee, just veering away from the heavyweight scene for a second, another member of his stable in Paddy Donovan, he's had a fight announced with Lewis Crocker recently, and he's trained by Billy Nelson, who you've worked with in the past. So that's quite an interesting situation there. But it's such a great fight, that isn't it?
Yeah, listen, I think it's the right time for both of them. Lewis is a little bit on in his career in terms of how many fights he's had and the experience he's gained. Paddy, to some's maybe been pushed into this fight a little bit early. He's only, I think, 14 and 0. But listen, Paddy's a great fighter, massively confident. I think both men have wanted this fight for a while. It's just about, both their teams trying to get the right timing for them. But I think Eddie Hearn's pretty much said, look, it's going to happen now. We're we're going. So a fantastic fight. I think I watched the press conference, which was pretty interesting. Bit of back and forth between Paddy and Lewis, and then not too much back and forth between Billy and Andy, but Billy and Andy, putting in their 10 pence worth as well and giving their thoughts and stuff like that. And I think it's gonna be a cracker, gonna be a massive fight, and the atmosphere inside the Odyssey Arena that night's gonna be incredible. It's Limerick against Belfast. I think Lewis kind of said it was the North v South. I don't think it is. It's a fight for the whole of Ireland, wherever you're positioned within that. And it's definitely Belfast versus Limerick. It's a massive night for Irish boxing.
Definitely, you say there, about them taking it fairly early in their career. But do you think this is the ripple effect of Eddie Hearn and maybe Riyadh season when they're putting on these evenly matched fights, that it's trickling down the boxing pyramid, and that fighters that are at domestic level waiting to burst onto the world scene are now being matched in 50-50 fights throughout the different levels of boxing, and that maybe if this is a good fight, which we're fully expecting it to be, that you can go on and have rematches and trilogies, and that it's not all about protecting that O, that it's more important to be in these 50-50 fights, and the winner progresses and the loser rebuilds and comes again.
I think Eddie's always kind of had that mantra to a certain extent. He's always tried to push his young prospects early on and see what they've got. Not necessarily in 50-50 fights, but push them in fights that you see where they're at. You see whether they deserve the status as a prospect or not. And I think with this one, Paddy might only be 14 and 0, but he's shown a lot in those 14 fights, and he's a very, he's world class in my opinion. Lewis has done tremendously well in his 18 fights, phenomenal puncher, and a tough man. So I just think the timing's perfect. Even though it's early on in their careers, it's a kind of stepping stone fight for both of them. think they then become the mandatory for the IBF, I think it is, after this.
Oh,
So,
goodness.
aye, it's when you put that in the mix as well, neither man was going to turn it down.
Absolutely. Now, coming back round to the heavyweight scene, which is the main reason I wanted to chat to you today. We'll start with we're about a week on from the announcement of another Tyson Fury retirement. This one, it seems a bit more believable almost at the position that he's in, given that he's lost to Usyk twice, that maybe there's nothing out there for him to achieve. What's your thoughts on the announcement, Nick? Are you on the side that it's another false alarm, or do you believe that this is actually the end of Tyson Fury's glittering career?
Yeah, I don't think it's a false alarm. I just think we've got to a stage now where what else does Tyson have to achieve? I have to, what's he got to aim for? The only fight he's really got to aim for now is a blockbuster payday with Anthony Joshua and a sold out Wembley. But out with that, I can't see Tyson trying to regain world titles now. Do you know what I mean? It's the rematch. There's not another fight with Usyk there. I can't really see anybody outside Anthony Joshua that he would have any interest in fighting. He's got nothing to prove. He's done everything. So he's won every belt. He's well, when I say he's won every belt, he's near enough won every belt from British level all the way up to every world title. So these guys genuinely got nothing to prove. So I think if it was the end of his career, few people will be disappointed in our face Joshua, but at the same time, when we look back on it in 20, 30 years' time, he would definitely go down as one of the best in this generation and an all-time, maybe not an all-time great, but definitely up there with those boys.
Definitely. Now, in terms of saying he's not going to win world titles again, which is a fair point to make, but in terms of 20, 30 years down the line, looking back and looking at how he's looked at in the all-time rankings of British heavyweights and maybe world heavyweights. But there's also for both him and Anthony Joshua that question mark of them not delivering this fight. We still talk about Lennox Lewis and Riddick Bowe and whatnot from years gone by that they never fought. Lennox Lewis fighting Mike Tyson when he wasn't maybe at his best, and there's always those little question marks. Do you think fighters with the ego of say Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua um, one, can they leave that amount of money on the table? They're both filthy rich. They've got truckloads of cash, but the payday will be enormous for those two, especially if it'll be a two-fight deal. And also, can their egos stomach the fact that they'll always be questioned that they didn't fight each other when the fight was there to be made?
Uh, I s- I can't really speak for Anthony Joshua because I've never really spent any time with him. But for me, I genuinely don't think Tyson cares. I think I don't think he's got much. He's definitely got an ego. We've all got an ego to a certain extent, but Tyson is his own man, and he doesn't get. He's not really fussed by anybody's outside opinion. So probably would he be too bothered if it never happened? He'd probably just whatever. But like you say, the amount of money that would be involved in that fight, if it presented to him, I see it being hard to turn down. And listen, of course, that ego part of him as well is going to want to get in there, prove his point. I think that would really, if he got a victory over Joshua to finish his career, that would really, set it in stone where he is in the grand scheme of things, and would definitely push him up there as the best British fighter, one of the best big heavyweights of this generation, this era. You look at what he's done, beating Klitschko away, the trilogy with Deontay Wilder, the other fights he's been involved in. It definitely put him up there as one of the best.
Definitely. Now, with this announcement of a retirement, like we say, it's not the first, second, third, or even fourth time for Tyson Fury. The one thing it does probably rob him off, if it is genuine, it robs him of that selling off into the sunset. And for example, if Alexander Usyk was to have announced his retirement last week, you can imagine the tribute articles that would have been written, the documentaries that would have been on DAZN or other boxing platforms, congratulating him on such a great career. Maybe because people can't really take Tyson Fury like genuinely because of previous retirements that he's come back from. Is he robbing himself of that moment again? Maybe he doesn't care, but you could imagine if this was his first retirement, how people would come out in the droves and it'd be
Yeah.
congratulations on a great career, this, that, and the other. But we might get 5 years down the line, there might be another comeback. So you quite never know with Tyson Fury.
I know what you mean, but like I say, I genuinely don't think he cares too much. Genuinely think he's quite happy. He's got his family around him. That's who he's interested in. That's who he wants to care and provide for. He's made a bucket load of money. He's never going to be worried about money again in his life. He's also actually quite a smart businessman, as you could imagine. So he'll have other interests outside of boxing that he's pursuing and other ways of making money. Aye, like I say, he probably does deserve a little bit more than he's had, but I don't think he'll be too bothered about not getting that coverage by the press. And listen, he probably understands as well. It is the fifth time he's retired, so you can kind of have to accept that you're not going to quite get the send off that maybe an Alexander Usyk would because he's never done it before.
Of course, and speaking of Usyk, he doesn't keep the media profile of a Tyson Fury or an Anthony Joshua, but it's easy to forget just how much this man's accomplished. The undisputed at cruiserweight, undisputed at heavyweight, back-to-back victories over Joshua, defeating Dubois, back-to-back victories over Tyson Fury. In your opinion, Nick, just how good is Alexander Usyk? Is he someone that you would rank as an all-time great that could go down in any era and be competitive?
I think you'd be stupid to say no. I regard Tyson as one of the best heavyweights I've seen, and Usyk beat him twice. Both, really, really close fights. Both kind of, you know, depended what you seen, what you liked, who you had winning. But what an incredible fighter. And to be involved, like you say, in the two massive fights with Tyson, to beat Joshua back to back, to become undisputed in both the cruiserweight and the heavyweight division, to be undefeated doing it. And not, he never had an easy fight really as a heavyweight, even when he came in. Every fight he had was tough and he's overcame every challenge. And I think what he's had to put his body through as well to stay at heavyweight and to be competitive at heavyweight and hope be heavy enough basically to fight at heavyweight is testament to the fella. Do you know what I mean? He's the ultimate professional. He's listen, he's hard not to like. Do you know what I mean? I wanted Tyson to win, but did I dislike Usyk? Not at all. No, I actually really like him. I like who he is. I like the man he is. I like the aura around him. He's just a fantastic sportsman, and probably arguably in the top 10 all time now. You would have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, in terms of retirement, would you, if you was, sat on the shoulder of Alexander Usyk and you was whispering in his ear, would you advise Usyk, you've got plenty of money now, ride off into the sunset, or would you say, there's still other challenges out there, for instance, a Dubois rematch, or let's say a Zhilei Zhang fight out in Beijing or something like that, something left field, because I think Usyk's the kind of guy that gets turned on by those kind of moments, the left field, bigger challenges. Do you think there's more fights ahead for Alexander Usyk, or would you say, what time's time, let's get out on top and retire undefeated at the very pinnacle of the sport?
First thing, it's easy for me to say what I think another fighter should do,
Yeah.
but when you're a fighter and you're in that position, it's very much on the man. You know what I mean? If it was me, I would quite like to see him retire now. He's done everything. He's beat everybody. He's got nothing left. Like I say, same as Tyson. He's got nothing left to prove. Even less to prove. He's literally beat anyone that was put in front of him and done it. Apart from the two Tyson fights in a very convincing manner. So if it was me, yeah, you've made all the money you could ever hope to make. Just retire with a legacy. Uh, but we've seen Daniel Dubois jump in the ring at the end of the fight, call him out. That's probably going to light his fire a little bit. We've heard Turkey come out and say that the plan for Usyk is not going to be revealed until after February 22nd, which makes it pretty obvious to me that they're kind of hoping that Daniel wins so that they can make that rematch. But listen, Daniel Dubois got a very hard fight in front of him in Joseph Parker, one that I picked Parker to win. So again, Joe could spoil the party as he has done the last two times he's been out. But listen, I think Usyk should probably really think about where he's going to go now, and unless it's another massive challenge and another massive payday, I'd probably sail off into the sunset.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, just the final one on the Fury and Usyk situation. Obviously, we've not spoken in a little while, which is not like us. You know, you're one of my favorite guests to have on SimBoxx. But in terms of the Tyson Fury Alexander Usyk fights, did you agree with the winner both times being Usyk? Like we've said there that both fights were uber competitive. Take away that round nine where Usyk was utterly dominant in the first fight, it was uber competitive. Usyk coming out on top both times. Did you agree with that, Nick? Did you have any qualms with that?
I think the first fight, the deciding factor was the ninth round. I think when you get hurt like that, and listen, testament to Tyson, he came through it and managed to survive, box on the 10th and the 11th and the 12th. But that was probably the swinging factor in Usyk's favour in that fight. And I kind of feel like when I initially watched this first fight, I thought Tyson had nicked it. First time I watched it through, I thought Tyson had done enough. So when I seen the three scorecards with 4 rounds in favour of Usyk, I was like, "Oh, it's a bit wide for how close a fight that was. If it had been 1 or 2 rounds either way, I might not have argued with it, but I kind of felt a wee bit hard done by. I thought Tyson had done enough. When I watched it the second time round, I had it even going into the 11th round, and I thought Usyk just pulled away in the last two. You know, it's hard. Like I say, I'm probably biased because I'm such a Tyson fan. I know the guy. I think he's a great fighter. I really wanted him to win. But when I watched it back the second time and tried to be as impartial as possible, I thought that Usyk just went through the gears in the last 2 rounds and just done enough to nick it. So, yeah, maybe a couple of arguments about how the three judges had it four rounds wide, but in the grand scheme of things, it probably was the right decision. But two really close fights. A lot of the rounds you couldn't pick between both men. But aye, for me, I wouldn't really have any arguments that Usyk won both times.
Yeah, two epic, all-time great heavyweight fights. Obviously, if Tyson Fury does retire, stays retired, that leaves Anthony Joshua without a dance partner. It seemingly was all lined up. The stars of the line for Joshua and Fury to finally settle the score. Now with Joshua, it seems that everyone's coming out now calling for the fight. Mike Bakoli, a man you know very well. That could be a huge clash in Africa. Turki Al Sheikh calling for Joshua Wilder, which is another fight that we wanted to see a few years back, maybe past its sell by date. Dillian White chucking his name in the hat, the Zhang and Caballero winner, the Parker Dubois winner. So there seems to be options there for Anthony Joshua, but for not the first time in his career, Nick, it seems that Anthony Joshua is looked at as a vulnerable target that he doesn't carry that fear aura anymore that he had maybe 2017, 2018, and that these guys are fully expecting to go in there and get the job done. Case in point being Joe Parker. If he beat Daniel Dubois, he's lost to Joshua, but arguably would go in there as the favourite in a rematch. So, yeah, where do we stand with Anthony Joshua in your opinion?
Listen, I think Joshua has had an incredible career. What he's done from amateur to professional. Again, the guy's nearly done it all. Do you know what I mean? He's nearly won every belt. He's had it's the biggest draw in boxing at one point was Anthony Joshua, and probably still one of the biggest draws in boxing is Anthony Joshua. And I think a lot of the heavyweights coming through now have Joshua to thank for what he's built. Before Joshua came along, it was there wasn't much going on. He totally revolutionised it all, brought it back to the forefront of the boxing scene. And yeah, he's a Hall of Famer in my opinion, basically on the nights he's put on. He's had some great performances in there. And yeah, he's unquestionably an incredible fighter and he's got a good legacy which will live on. However, do I see him fighting at the top level again against the likes of Joe Parker, a rematch with Daniel Dubois, Martin Bakole, Caballero Jack? Probably not. I don't think he's. I think he's had his day in time in the sun, and I think now he's going to only slowly be on the decrease. Now, listen, he's a fighter, so and he's got massive punching power. So you'd have to give him a chance against anybody. But I just think he's on the decline now, and I can't see him ever getting back to the heights that we once seen him at.
You know when you say
But he's
that,
a
Nick.
fighter, he's a proud man, so you can't rule against him. But that's just my own personal opinion.
Absolutely. No, when you say there, Nick, that in your opinion, he's on the decline. What would you put that down to? Do you think it's one too many damaging defeats? When he has lost to Ruiz or he lost to Dubois, there's quite concussive stoppages, and he took quite a lot of damage. The Usyk fights, although he did ship some punishment, it wasn't as brutal as say the Daniel Dubois knockout. Do you put it down to that it's an accumulation of damage like that he's received? Do you put it down to the fact that he's a very wealthy man, that he's not got the hunger and the desire, no matter what he might say at press conferences on camera, but deep down within him that the hunger and desire is not there? What in your opinion would you put that down to from the outside looking in?
Just a mixture of things, probably you can like listen, I don't doubt he's a hungry individual, but like you say, when you've got 200 million or 300 million in the bank, it does change things. Makes you a little bit less hungry, I'm sure.
I'd love to know.
Aye, listen, I'd love to have that problem. But then, he's probably been beat a couple of times now, and he's been beat in relatively, dominating fashion by Daniel Dubois. I'd say he was given a boxing lesson by Usyk twice. He was lucky not to be stopped in that first fight. Usyk, he managed to hold on to the end. Second time round, made a better attempt. Definitely had, more success. But again, Usyk kind of schooled him boxing wise. Obviously, the loss to Andy Ruiz was a kind of shock at the time. Nobody seen that coming. And a pretty emphatic victory. You couldn't really argue with the stoppage. He was out on his feet, Joshua. So he's lost that kind of aura of invincibility. The momentum going forward with him isn't really there. Yeah, I think it's just a mixture of factors, but I can't see him competing at that level anymore. Another thing is as well, all these heavyweights, there's youngsters coming through, and the guys who were maybe just outside that top five have really upped their game. They've momentum going with them, and they've pushed themselves into these world title, challenging positions. So it's probably a mixture of factors, but I can't really see Joshua getting back in amongst it now. I think these guys got too much momentum, too many good performances behind them now. And like you say, I can't really see him changing uh, the outcome of the fight with Daniel Dubois. I can't really see him beating Joe Parker now. I can't see him beating Martin Bakole. Caballero, a tough fight for him. Caball's great form, taking out two bogeymen of the division and Makhmudov and Sanchez. No, Zhang would probably be the one guy out of those that I could maybe see Joshua doing a number on, purely because he's fitter, he's a massive puncher, and listen, he is good technically. Even though Zhang's a massive puncher and good technically, but I could see Joshua, doing a number on him. So yeah, it's hard to say, but for Joshua, I think the two fights he'd be targeting would either be the Dubois rematch or a rematch with Joe Parker. I know that he thinks very highly of Joe,
Hmm.
and if he's probably going to give anybody a payday, because that's what they're all calling him out for, because they want a payday. He'd probably like to give Joe the payday. So Joe comes through the Daniel Dubois fight, and I think the Joshua rematch is a realistic prospect.
Absolutely. Now that leads us on perfectly to the next point that I wanted to discuss, from fights that are not made that we're fantasizing about to fights that most certainly are made. And Feb 22nd, that brilliant Riyadh season card with Dimitri Bivol and Beterbiev rematching, Hamza Shiraz fighting for world titles, Callum Smith and Joshua Buatsi. But with yourself being a heavyweight, the two fights we're going to focus on are the heavyweight bouts on the card. Ajit Kabayel against Zhilei Zhang, great fight, and of course Daniel Dubois defending the IBF world title against Joe Parker. We'll start with Dubois Parker. I think it's really interesting here because these guys have reached the pinnacle of the sport. Daniel, a current heavyweight champion, Joe Parker, a former world champion, guys that have fought the very best, lost at times, had their desire question, their will to win question with losses to Joe Joyce, Dillian White, Anthony Joshua, Alexander Usyk, and now
Yeah.
the two of the form heavyweights in the division. They're meeting at the exact right time in terms of the wins Daniel Dubois has had, the wins that Joe Parker have had. It can't be questioned that this really is a great fight at the right time.
Yeah, listen, I think they both got fairly similar stories, and they were defeated, they looked down and out, and they've came back, rebuilt their careers, and now two of the best heavyweights in the planet at the moment. Um, I think going into the fight, I favour Parker. I think that Dubois only has one. He doesn't have a plan A or B, plan B or C. He's got plan A. Go in there, bulldoze, roll over whoever's in front of him. That's his plan. Can you stop that? I don't know. But I do fancy Joe to do it. I think Joe's the more versatile boxer, probably got the better skill set. Listen, he's not as big a puncher, but he's got the IQ to go in there, build a game plan with Andy, and get the job done. And I think it's going to be a different Joe Parker you've seen in there. The work he's done, he's been had quite a long layoff now. Almost, what was it, a year since he was last in the ring?
Something like that, yeah, not far off.
Him and George have been building a new fighter as George, or Parker 5.0 as George puts it, but they've been putting on a lot of good weight to get. I think Joe was up at nearly 126 kilos at one point, which is crazy. And he's fit with that and strong. They're obviously going to come down in weight for this, but he's a bigger man, stronger man, more powerful, more athletic, and he's kept all his fitness with that. So it's going to be a different Joe Parker you see in the ring, February 22nd.
You mentioned there that he's going to be a different fighter when he's in the ring, but at the press conference last week, he was almost like a different guy there. Everyone knows Joe Park is he's a good guy. No doubt he switches it on when he gets in the ring and he become a bit of a killer. But at that press conference, there was a bit of spite there, wasn't it? There was a bit of needle there between him and Daniel, almost like Joe felt a little bit disrespected, especially with the way they're maybe overlooking him with the Dubois Usyk rematch talks without even getting the win against Parker. There was definitely that little bit of spite there with Joe Parker.
I think he probably listen. I've discussed that with him, and he just said, "Oh, listen, it's just boxing. It's part of the business. He's just trying to promote himself." And I'd say that legitimately, Joe, there's no like bad blood there because he done that. Joe just kind of shrugged it off, but he's a very proud man, and quite rightly, look at what he's done in his career and the comeback he's had in the last 4 or 5 fights. So. I think he's quite right to feel disrespected that he's been overlooked by Dubois jumping into the ring there. I don't think Dubois came up with that himself. Somebody put him up to that. There's no way that he would have just jumped in there off his own back. That's just my opinion. Obviously, being around the guy, I know that he was probably pushed in there to do that. But listen, I think Joe's got a bit between his teeth. He's fully focused, as is Daniel. He always is. And I think it's going to be an incredible fight. Definitely expect fireworks. And I'm as a fight fan, I'm really looking forward to it.
Definitely a great fight to look forward to. Nick, just to close out, just give us your brief thoughts and prediction for Ajit Kabayel against Zhilei Zhang.
Yeah, I've been asked a couple of times. I fancy Cabayel. I think Zhang's weaknesses are his gas tank, and against a guy like Cabayel, who's extremely fit, one of the fittest heavyweights I've ever seen in the gym and in the ring. And he's a ferocious body puncher. I think he'll just break Zhang down over is it 10 or 12 rounds, I think? It'll be 12 round fight. I think he'll break him down over the 12 rounds. I think he'll potentially get him out there with a late stoppage. Having said that, like I said, Zhang's always dangerous because he carries such massive power. But I fancy Caballero to do the business there, and I think he'll do it in emphatic fashion later on.
And we look forward to that fight as well. Nick, what's the plans moving forward in 2025 for yourself? Let your fans and our followers know what the plan is for Nick Campbell this year.
Yeah, listen, like I said, I'm nursing a bit of an injury at the moment. I'm trying to get over that and recover from that. So as soon as that's done, we'll see where the chips lie and see what's happening. But one thing for sure, I love the sport of boxing. I love having these conversations with the likes of yourself. And I'll always be involved in some aspect or some way, or I'll always keep my hand in there. I'm always training. So never say never, but whether that's the last time you see me fight or not, you can always expect to see me muggle on here chatting about boxing and trying to entertain and talk a little bit of nonsense. Just don't take me any of my advice and any betting or anything like that because it never ever works.
Brilliant stuff, Nick. It's always a pleasure. Guys, thanks for watching the interview today with myself and Nick Campbell. Leave your comments, your thoughts, your predictions for all the fights discussed in the comments below. Make sure you hit the like button. Please hit that subscribe button. We've got plenty more content on the way. And I'll catch you next time. Nick, thank you.
Look, legend man, thank you very much. Hope everyone enjoyed. Speak to you all soon.